Right, Rod. I don't know if you expected a blowout necessarily here, but I will say Chris Collinsworth asked Tirico, or maybe it was the other way around, and about the end, I think it was near the end of the third quarter, and he said, are the 49ers this good, or are the Cowboys not as good as we thought? And I was thinking about that exact same question to open up this podcast with you in the second quarter. Now, obviously, I'm thinking of storylines or narratives or whatever to talk about. And I was like, yeah, if this game gets out of hand, that's one thing. But I fully expect Dallas to be in this game, and then we'll probably end up talking about something else. So I kind of had it in my brain, put it aside, and then as the score started to get out of hand, I brought it back to the forefront of my brain and thought, I need to ask Rod what he thinks. Are the 49ers this good, or was Dallas not as good as we thought?
I'm going to answer this question with a story. I boxed when I was a youngster.
Okay.
All the way up until I was like 15 or 16.
So what weight are we talking?
I fought at 135.
Okay.
So I beat this dude pretty good. And my teammates afterwards, they started, it started in crumbing on how bad this dude was. And my coach came over and was like, you're the last person who needs to be talking about how bad he is, because all that does is diminishes your win and performance.
Yeah, you beat a nobody if he's not
so
good.
I thought the first thought that came to mind to me in the second quarter, right around the second quarter, is damn, this defense is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to answer your question, I think we should put a pin in who the Cowboys are. And I think we should just love on our team tonight, because they played a magnificent game all the way around. I believe they are for real.
Yeah.
Defensively, they were great. I'm going to start at the top because, again, I get all kinds of hate. Brock was amazing. He was accurate. His decision making was on point. 70% completion rate. Again, no turnovers. Really, really strong in the pocket. Just an awesome performance by the quarterback. We didn't really have a standout performance on offense by anybody else in terms of numbers, but CMC's dual threat capacity, Debo's dual threat capacity, Ayuk is just, he continues to, he's like a first down and touchdown machine.
It's always open.
I saw there was like a stat that was like, of his 17 catches coming into this game, 15 of them were for like either first downs or touchdowns. And he kind of extended that today. I know at least 3 of his catches were for first downs. It was just an Kittle. Well, I guess let me step back. Kittle did have a outstanding performance. I don't know how in my notes I missed that, but he was the I don't want to give away my player of the game, but if it wasn't for this other guy, Kittle probably would have been the offensive player of the game. He was magnificent both as a pass catcher and in the trickeration game and in the blocking game. And so, yeah, it was just a great all-around performance.
Kittle had 3 catches, and they were all touchdowns. So how's that for efficiency there?
Crazy.
So the other thing that I was thinking about as I was watching this game is Sunday Night Football. You don't have a bigger audience this time of the year. The bright lights, Dallas brings so many eyeballs because of their fan base. And I was like, if Brock was 80% of Brock, I wouldn't even blink an eye, just because outside of that, a couple of playoff games, he hasn't really played under the big lights. He hasn't really had to showcase on a big stage. And with all of the narrative that is currently out there about whether he's good or whether he's lucky or whether it's the Niner system, all those things, I thought, this would be an opportune time for him to look a little shaky, just because everyone is waiting for him to look shaky. And it was absolutely the other way. He had a couple of passes that were knocked down, one of them thrown off of his back foot that he probably was pretty bothered with. But everything else was a smart incompletion. Everything else was, not forcing it into certain areas. And I mean, he chopped up Dallas's zone like he was a Ginsu knife. Like, this dude, and the couple of those balls, because he doesn't throw that laser, sometimes you think, oh, like, the players are so athletic on defense these days, they're going to be able to at least get a hand on it or something. And none, that there was a pass over the middle. I don't remember exactly who it went to, but I was like, oh, that's got to be picked, or that's got to be batted down. And I think it was a middle linebacker who jumped. He did jump. He couldn't reach it, and it floated right into the hands of Ayuk or Debo or whatever for a 20-yard gain. And so I can see why some of the folks will be like, oh, yeah, well, teams are just going to throw different looks at him, and his lack of fastball is going to X, Y, and Z. Dallas, their whole game plan was to show him as a fraud tonight, and it absolutely didn't work. We called Micah Parsons' name maybe 3 times, but it was not because he was going to sack the quarterback. It was because, he was on Trent Williams' side, and Trent wasn't there. It was because he was making a play on a running play instead of in Brock's face. So I just found this. We've seen all the great ones. We've seen all the great performances. Montana Young, Kaepernick, Jimmy G on his best day. And Brock was right up there with every great performance on a big stage against the Cowboys tonight. And, I kind of like what you said in the beginning about, well, if Dallas isn't great, then who did the Niners really beat? I'm going to guess now the Dallas did not come out of this game injury-free. It looks like they got pretty banged up in this game. But talent for talent, especially you saw it in the first half, those guys are fast. Those guys hit hard. And it looked like it was going to be a battle of fast defenses. And, Niners come out in the third quarter after Dallas kicks a field goal, and they just go, okay, we're going to press the gas pedal here a little bit. So ultimately, to me, this was the Brock Purdy experience on national TV on the big stage. The naysayers are ready to just eat this dude up the second he makes a mistake, and he didn't make a mistake. 4 touchdowns, 70% completion again. Just brilliant football. And I know Shanahan. Some of this. He's got these plays in his back pocket, because all we heard was, Trey, they're going to use Trey and his mind and his knowledge of this playbook. And, and I'm sure they did. And I'm sure Trey told them everything that the Niners do well. But I never saw the roll out to the right flea flicker before in a 49ers playbook. And Kyle busted that thing open. So as I'm saying, it was Brock Purdy's stage tonight. It was also Kyle going like, yeah, you act like we don't have stuff up our sleeve. And he pulled it out tonight. So just fantastic all the way around. Now, tell me how you felt, because I know a lot of 49er fans were ready. Niners are clearly, they're doing fine. I think at this point they're up, maybe even been 21-0. Maybe it was 14-0. Isaiah Oliver gives up a deep pass, people are looking for a scapegoat at that moment, right? Oh, the Niners are playing so well, and of course it's Oliver. I mean, I felt sort of the same way. And then they come back, and Collinsworth says, "Oh, underappreciated here is Oliver's holding CD Lamb to, he's making him, he's blanketing him, and X, Y, and Z." And then I went, okay, this is why seeing the entire field and understanding what's going on is the best, because all we see is Oliver get beat. We don't see that he's actually playing good football before that. So
5 targets, 4 receptions for 49 yards for CD Lamb. They did a good. You said a lot there, and I want to. I said that I'm just going to give our team the love, but there are several things that actually, I want to that you got to give Kyle credit for, but kind of dampens, I guess, the performance in a way. Number one, 175 yards rushing. We made Micah and those pass rushers run defenders is one of the things we did, that helped stifle that pass rush, which is where they had coming in. The advantage was their defensive line against everybody other than Trent.
Yep.
So that was a big matchup, and we won that because on the back end, their secondary, especially with the loss of Diggs, and then the kid Bland ended up getting injured. Their secondary is kind of trash. So my thought coming in was if we could keep Micah and those guys from wrecking the game, particularly on the right side of our offensive line, we could make some hay with Debo and Ayuk and those guys against their pass defense, which kind of came to fruition. I mean, we had guys running, wide open. Is basically Gilmore kind of back there by himself, trying to, do something with all of these weapons. And obviously, Kittle is a matchup nightmare for anybody. He's too fast for linebackers. He's too big generally for any defensive back. He's
so much so that one, I think it was a safety, lined up a good yard and a half offsides, trying to bump Kittle on the line.
He's just a nightmare. So, if I were to say anything about a test, them being a test, it was, if you are able to figure out a way to stifle their pass rush, then they become a much, they are kind of a toothless lion, so to speak. I mean, it's just they're kind of like us, not like us in that sense, that for us, the pass rush is the key to everything.
Yep.
If we aren't able to get pressure on the quarterback, we've seen it already this season. If we're not getting pressure versus the Rams, at times against the Steelers, if we're not getting pressure, you can kind of pick us apart on the back end just based on the way that we play coverage. It's kind of the same thing with Dallas in the fact that, and they're just not, with all the injuries, they're just not that talented back there. And that was a matchup deficiency when I was looking at the numbers coming in. We had a distinct advantage, our receivers against their defensive backs. And that we didn't have a huge passing night, but 70% completions, and how many touchdown passes showed that we were able to exploit them through the air and through the ground. We just were able to kind of run through them.
So when I did my Friday preview, I was reading through David Lombardi, who wrote a really good piece on kind of the lack of trash talk between the two franchises here. Like Jerry Jones literally saying, the Niners are probably the team to beat, but they're going to have to go through us twice at least. And so in that piece, David Lombardi wrote, I believe the number was 222, and that was the ground yardage that the Arizona Cardinals got on Dallas in the upset. And his hypothesis, his thesis statement was, if the Niners can run their power game, Dallas is a little light, and they would have an advantage and probably tire that defense out a bit. And then it's kind of what happened. Now, it's not the CMC game necessarily that we were used to. He only averaged 2.7 yards a carry. His long was 8 yards. And there was a moment in that game where he kind of got dinged on a pass play. And I was like, I'm not sure if this dude is right. And then like 3 plays later, he takes a screen and goes 20 yards. And I was like, okay, he's probably fine. But, it's not like he ran the ball necessarily well. It was just the fact that they were able to feed him and move the ball and still set up everything else. Debo had 5 carries today. Jordan Mason ends up the top rusher, 10 for 69, but
that one big one was
a third of that was when the game was over and the Dallas defense was just like, all right, we don't want to play anymore.
And I think that something has to be said for the fact that they had to set up their defense to stop the run. I mean, they were keyed on stopping the run, and maybe that limited our, so we weren't able to be as necessarily efficient as we have been in the past, but we were able to be effective. It was definitely effective, and it definitely set up other things that Kyle was able to exploit.
Yes. If you are a Cowboys fan, some of the blame is going to go Dak's way, though giving up 42 points is a little tough to blame on Dak, but he was not able to get that offense moving. So what you had instead was, I'm trying to look at the time of possession numbers here. What you had was, again, going back to David Lombardi's thesis, Niners 37 minutes and 5 seconds, Dallas 22:55. So Dallas's defense on the field a lot. The Niners are just kind of moving, and sometimes at kind of a slow pace, and others they're getting some chunks here and there, bigger chunks here and there. And Dak, his inability to convert on these third downs, when Dallas this year so far through 4 games was the best team in the NFL on third down. They were over 50% on third down. So a lot of that, I give credit to the Niners. It's not like all of a sudden Dak forgot how well he was playing in the first 4 weeks. But this defense seems to be a problem for him. I think in the 2 previous playoff games, it's something like 1 touchdown and 3 picks in those 2 games. And then today, 3 picks again, just in this 1 game. So I imagine there's going to be a lot of talk in Cowboys land about Dak and his terrible football game. There's an injury piece to them where they were already short. And then, it seemed like every 10 minutes, another Cowboys player was having to be pulled off of the field because of injury. So I understand it's a quarterback league. Dak's going to get a lot of the critics on his back, but there was a lot of other things going on here. And I don't know if, if Cooper Rush or whomever you want, Dak is the guy, but I'm not sure, you could put, the Niners have done this to really good quarterbacks, like Aaron Rodgers specifically is the one that I keep thinking about, where it's just like the things that are supposed to be there that they expect to be there just aren't there for whatever reason. And when the pass rush, I'm saying it like that because Chris Collinsworth says pass rush. And I heard this because Bill Simmons and Cousin Sal always make fun of him. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's even more apparent when you're watching this game super closely. He even says pass when he just means to say pass without the rush. He's all over it now. But when the heat is coming and it just I'm guessing it just did not look exactly like what Dak thought it was going to look like today, and that's why exactly what you said in the beginning. The Niners can rush the passer. It just makes everything so urgent, and you don't want to have to be so urgent when you are passing the football down the field.
6 tackles for losses, 4 sacks, 9 quarterback hits. Bosa, this was by far his most disruptive game of the season. You could just, I was watching specifically, and they were just sending multiple guys at him, which freed up other guys to do, to put pressure on. I mean, he was really, really a problem for them. And their offensive line, again, it was ballyhooed. This was the first game that they had the line that they expected to have in March or whatever. This was going to be the first time that they were going to have all 5 of them together, and that lasted like a quarter, and they started getting injuries there. So I mean, it was just it felt to me they couldn't run the ball. Well, what was it? 52 yards rushing. So I mean, if they can't run it, and so then they become one-dimensional, and then they can't pass block. Dak has people in his face and at his feet, and Bosa is just they can't deal with that pressure. I mean, it's just it's a so obviously, he's a quarterback. He gets paid the big bucks to take the arrows, but in watching that game, I didn't have the feeling that Dak was trash. I just felt like the 49er defense was just overwhelming his team, their team collectively, and subsequently the quarterback is going to take the brunt of that, and he's gonna, when you have a 52.4 quarterback rating, that's a problem. I mean, I'm sure he's gonna hear it in their market. But and then the turnovers, of course. What did it end up being? Three picks. Yeah, that is not. So he did not have a good night. So I'm not at all trying to be a Dak apologist. I don't have any dog in that fight, but it was I think that the problems went beyond Dak. I don't think that if we can say that they were a quarterback performance away from being in this game. I mean, I think that they're, again, like I said, all of them, through the offensive line struggled, their running back struggled, their receivers struggled. They were all getting the clamp split on them. Fred Warner was all over the place.
Amazing.
It was crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to I mean, we've got guys who are performing at such a high level. Bosa and Warner and Greenlaw and Mooney.
Dre was
And
awesome.
yeah, it was just, I mean, it's, and he was giving love to Oliver. I don't know enough to be watching the slot, so I don't know. I guess I'll try to highlight him when I watch the All 22 later on this week. But it's good that he is playing well, because he's kind of a punching bag during training camp, because I mean it seemed like he couldn't do anything right. But yeah, it's good. The defense is just performing at a phenomenal level.
So Rick brought up the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is right after I finished recording my my little mini pod that I put up on Friday, the news comes out that they traded for Randy Gregory out of Denver, former Dallas Cowboys player as well. And I know the idea is, well, Bosa's getting double teamed on just about every play. So you have someone on the other side, and that person's going to have less people to worry about. We saw Drake Jackson get hurt a little bit today. Farrell, I think, was the only starter that was in the game on the defense late. I'm assuming because Drake got hurt. What does Randy Gregory bring? And I know there's this thought that, he's gonna be sort of like if we want to go like way back into the way back machine, like, the Niners add Fred Dean to a young defense, and that makes all the difference in the world. Now, this Niners defense is already elite, so you're adding somebody who should help. But I mean, if you look at Gregory's numbers, he doesn't stay on the field. I think he's only played something like 10, maybe 10 games the last 2 years, and he's never played a full 16 or 17 game season before. So,
and a lot of that has to do with suspensions, and that is, I obviously think, you have to defer to them that they have done their due diligence and that he has matured and is not going to be a distraction. So I'm not even gonna. I guess I just did bring it up, but that being said, it was a shock to me.
Yeah,
when I went and looked at his numbers, and the comparison I did for me was obvious, was to Kerry Hyder, because he was the one who got released, and it was shocking. They came into the league at the same time, and they basically have the same numbers, which is shocking based on the fact that I am a big pedigree guy. I put a lot of stock in where you came from. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. And he was a high level prospect all throughout from high school on into college, on into coming into the league. He was a blue chip prospect. So his lack of so that is what you're getting. That's what you're signing. Is you're signing a guy who has top of the food chain talent. Now, the fact that he has not produced with that talent is sort of troubling, but we've seen it before where you get a guy in the right circumstance where Randy Gregory is not being asked to be the player he was asked to be in Dallas. That he is not, he was Micah Parsons at one point in time. He was supposed to be their DN1, so and obviously he never performed up to that level. But hell, he is what? He's a rotational player here. So, kind of like we're seeing the emergence of Javon Kinlaw this year, he pardon me, didn't really perform. When you draft somebody as the 14th overall, 14th overall, you're expecting them to be your a defensive interior player. You're expecting them to be a starter. You're not expecting them to be the anchor of you don't draft someone to be the anchor of your second unit. It's kind of not how that works. But he's performing well in that. Maybe, that would be my hope. My greatest hope is that he's able to come in, Gregory is able to come in and anchor that second unit or rep in, like, kind of give us some of that we lost with Ebukam and Aminahu. Those guys weren't they weren't stars. Let's put it like that. They weren't, nobody's Nick Bosa, but they weren't really, they were solid contributors. Their numbers, when you put them together, were, if they were one player, they would have been, very, very good players. And if Randy Gregory can give us 25, high level snaps, that would be, and give us more pressure, because he's not gonna. I don't think Randy Gregory is gonna see many double teams. He could, I guess, but when they are consistently trying to figure out who to double between Bosa and Hargrave and Armstead, all three of those guys are a problem for just one guy. Bosa and Hargrave because of their quickness and ability, and then Armstead just because of his size. He is just such a big dude that it's hard for one guy to handle him, to deal with him. You got to chip him or do something because he can. When he is right, when he's healthy, that's been the big thing with Armstead is his health. Because when he's healthy, he is a load. And he was in there on a couple of pass rushes today. So it's just one more piece to an already kind of stacked situation. There was no real downside. I was just being who I am, not really trolling, but there was a question online when the trade went down, is who won the trade. And how our fans are, we win everything. But my argument was, WG, if you're walking to the trash can with a half a sandwich and somebody comes to you and says, I'm going to give you $5 for that sandwich, it's kind of hard to say that the person who got the sandwich won the trade. You were about to throw that sandwich away, so you got $5 for something that you didn't value at all. So that's a win. The Broncos were willing to pay this dude $14 million to sit at home.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were able to get anything for him is a win for them. So and we'll see what we get out of it. He obviously is, if he's any kind of player, he's going to be more of a benefit to us than he is to them. And with their new ownership situation, $14 million is like, they sell what? Gum. They sell like $14 million worth of gum at Walmart properly a day. So I mean, they aren't tripping on eating any. I said that coming in. Russ has one more year. They'll eat that contract if they have to. The Waltons are not tripping on money. I don't think that they're gonna be penny pinching or worried about any of these contracts. So they're, as I talk about a lot with ownership, because that's something that interests me, is that these new owners, they're in a completely different stratosphere than like Jed and Mark Davis and the McCaskies in Chicago. They are not tripping on when you say, all right, a $250 million quarterback contract. They're not blinking at that. I guess nobody wants to waste $250 million. But they got that. They're not having to go do no home equity loans or anything to be trying to pay anybody anything. They've got the cash to do that. Like they've talked about it every week, it seems like, how John Lynch had to go and lobby Jed to sign Hargrave. I mean, those are not conversations that Stan Kroenke and the Waltons are having. I mean, $80 million. I mean, okay, I guess. we so it's going to be interesting. I think it was a good move for the Niners, because you don't have to worry about any kind of bidding war or anything. Although I say that a bidding war when that robust Randy Gregory market that only yielded a a pending release, a pending release press release. So I don't know that there was going to be this hot Randy Gregory market if they had just waited to let him hit the street. But
I mean, it tells me. Okay, I'll tell you what it tells me. Philadelphia may have been in on him. That's kind of what it tells
that makes sense.
And so they're like, well, when it comes to the waivers, or a team sort of right below them, right in the waivers.
Well, he's a vet, so there wouldn't have been waivers. He would have been just released. And
that's right.
Then it would have been just a free agent bidding war at that point. And I mean, so if they were able to lock him in at the vet minimum, which is great. So and so you don't know how much more cash above that a bidding war yields him. You just don't know. And we've got so it's not like we don't have the cap space. It's like $40 million. But again, as we've talked about before, that money really is for next season. So you don't want to be, I guess if you're going all in for this season, that extra $500, $600, $700,000 is not gonna make a whole big whoop in the whole big picture. But if you can save it, why not? If you can save it for whatever the difference between, I guess the swap was they traded a six for a seventh or something like that, which is like what, like 14 or 15 picks or whatever difference in that. I don't even know. I know there's somewhere in the world there's a chart that tells you how much theoretically a draft pick is worth. So I don't know how that math works. But obviously they felt it was worth it, and we'll see. Because I don't know that. I don't think Randy Gregory is going to end up being like a starter or anything. But it would not surprise me if he has, if he were to have 2 sacks in a very, in a pivotal game, it would be worth it.
Yeah. And the other thing about his contract is, if something goes wrong, it's a sneeze that they could just let him go, and then that's how it's kind of funny. He and Brock are going to be making the same amount of money this year. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yep,
that's awesome.
Yep. Well, technically from the 49ers, because he's actually making that $14 million
from on the Niners books.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a sweet deal all around. He gets to leave that train wreck of in Denver to come here.
I don't. Did you watch any of that game today?
Oh, I watched just the worst part. Gosh. Just the worst part. Poor Russ. I mean, I don't really have much love for Russ.
No,
but I found myself.
Russ did not care about our feelings all those years. So I don't care about his.
And that's true. But for some reason, I kind of felt bad for him. How the way that went down today. That was like a really, really cruel blow.
It's a father time thing though, right? Because
oh my goodness,
how many times, even against some of those really, really fast Niner defenses in the mid 2010s, his escapability was second, like maybe better than anybody that had ever seen. And now he's doing those same moves, and he's getting caught now, and he's getting hit.
Yeah, that you talk about Russ, though. That is gonna be forever be the image of Russ to me. Is we were so good and so disciplined in those Fangio defenses were so disciplined, and we would execute our assignments perfectly, and then Russ would just whoop, whoop, 15 yards, and it would just be just demoralizing. I'm not playing, and it would demoralize me. Like, come on, man.
Then all of a sudden, Richard Sherman's eating drumsticks on the middle of our field.
It doesn't even. It's not even fair. It just wasn't fair. So I guess I didn't feel sorry for Russ. Bump Russ. Good for him.
You know what's funny? Obviously, Skip Bayless. He's a Cowboys fan. Mm-hmm. He actually wrote a really interesting book on the Cowboys of the 90s back in the day that I remember reading that thing going like, oh my God. So much crazy stuff happened in that book. So he
back
does
before he was a hack.
Well, now he's more, I don't even know if his fingers work anymore except for Twitter. But he's on FS1 and he's doing his show. And when Shannon left, it left a little bit of a void. And so they've had like a few different folks who jump on with him. And I think Sherman is one of them. And so Sherman was just everything that old Skip tweeted, Sherman was just retweeting it. Just, I forget what Skip had written something about, now it's time for the defense to show up. And then, Sherman was trolling him about the defense and stuff. So I just found that to be really funny. But every time I think of Sherman, I think of him eating drumsticks in the middle of our field. So even when he's praising the Niners, and he played for the Niners for a couple years, I still that memory is just in my brain for whatever reason. All right, another thing I wanted to talk to you about, and this was if the Niners had only won, by a small number, I was gonna lead with this. They don't beat themselves. They outside of Dre, who could have got penalized by throwing somebody on the sideline that they held, and the Niners got one too, and the referees held that flag. The Niners do not beat themselves. Brock does not throw the football away. They've had a couple of fumbles, and then after I started talking about this with Shelvin in the Discord, then CMC fumbles, and I was like, oh my God, I just jinxed this dude talking about how the Niners don't beat themselves. But the penalties, they haven't had a penalties problem. Back in the Harbaugh days, you were good for 2 or 3 play clock expiring penalties or wasting timeouts, and they had one today, I think. 1 or 2 today, actually. But normally that is not a problem with the Shanahan team, even as complex as all of this stuff that Shanahan is yelling in Brock's ear. And they just do not make that unforced error that you hear about in tennis. It's about putting the pressure on the other team to make that error. And that's where not only those 3 interceptions for Dak, but really, like, if you believe in momentum, the momentum play was Fred punching the ball out of Pollard's hands
100%.
and then being able to keep that ball in bounds just based on the luck of the football, the way it bounced. And then I forget who fell on it, but Givens. And so, it's just stuff like that where if you're going to win the turnover battle and you're not going to have crazy penalties that erase things. They had that one penalty that erased a great Ayuk first down. And then Brock was like, all right, I'm just going to do the same play, but to Debo this time, we're still going to get it. You put so much pressure on the other team to have to be perfect in what they do because you're not giving them anything. And this is where I feel Niners and Eagles might be even a bigger matchup or a better matchup than anyone else on the other side. Cause I watch Kansas City, Buffalo, Miami. Sometimes they're, in Miami's case, they're a little too aggressive sometimes. So they'll give you one if you're out there long enough. But I look at it and I go, the Niners and the Eagles are sort of like the disciplined teams who really covet, keeping the football and not turning it over and, winning the running game and stretching the field and, winning the time of possession, like those types of things. I really look at those two teams and go, this might be, the matchup of all matchups. I forget when we even play them, down the road, but the way that those two football teams played, that game may not be as big of a national story as this game was, but that's your Niners Cowboys 1994 game right there to me. And if the Niners believe they have that team, if they are those dudes this year, the one team standing in their way that said, last year, you remember what happened, is the Eagles. That is the team that they have to conquer. Going back to that 1994 Cowboys-Niners parallel, that is the team that they have to prove that they have to beat right now, to me, to say that they're the Super Bowl favorite. I don't think I can say that without them beating the Eagles.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you're right. I'll just full stop. But unlike you, McDaniel and Fangio concern me. That they've got a real interesting situation and dynamic going on down there, and they are just so ultra aggressive. So I think that would be a great Super Bowl. But you're right that get there, I think that the NFC goes through Philadelphia.
Yes.
Well, but we're the two only undefeated teams.
Yes.
I don't know that I don't know that will last until I think we are. It's like in January. It's like that's like a late game for us. I don't have a schedule up, but
I'll find it.
For some reason I had thought about going to that game, but there's going to be snow, so that is out. So I know it's December or January, something where there's going to be snow on the ground in Philadelphia. And I've done that once and I'm never doing it again. So yeah, this is going to be it. That is definitely going to be for the rest, for
December
the rest of
3rd. It's December 3rd.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's not completely late into the season, but it's late enough. We still got a good solid 2 months to get there. So yeah, that's gonna be that is going to be the matchup of you. That's gonna be, I believe, what we had hoped this would be. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't call, I was concerned about this game. I thought we were better,
Yeah.
but I was not calling whatever 42-10, I guess is what it ended up being. I wasn't calling that at all. I didn't think
I mean, when I was looking at the numbers and I did that little mini pod, I thought more than likely going to be fairly close, but Dallas makes the mistake that the Niners don't make, especially at home. And so, to my surprise, it was not even a close prediction. That it was, it was over in early in the third quarter. So I like your Miami thing. And that, again, if we're talking about narratives and storylines, that would be fantastic for the NFL because you got the McDaniel and Shanahan scenario there. The
Fangio connection. He was our guy for the Harbaugh teams. It was, yeah.
The reason why I like our I like our matchup against them, and this kind of bodes to last year's game. They are like a fast break basketball team.
They really are.
And in the playoffs in the NBA, unless you are the 200 or 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 Golden State Warriors, it was generally coming down to who could play best in a slower style in crunch time. And so I still perceive
Chuck died on that hill. You can't win when you can't win playing that style. He's still saying that.
Yeah, that is Chuck. After all them titles, Chuck still he's still not into it. But I think in a playoff game, I think it would have to be in a Super Bowl. Obviously, I think the Niners, their ability to control, gives me faith that they're not getting blown out in a game like that. Because of course they're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to match speed for speed with Hill and who's the new kid? Who's the new kid
Claypool.
that they got? The young running back.
Oh, Achan.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! And they still got Mostert, and
they are just so fast.
Yeah,
it's like a track team out there.
It's like the late '90s Rams is kind of what it's like. And
Mike McDaniel has a type.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's fast.
and that is but I just feel like Niners get to Tua, they make them have to run the ball a little bit, and it changes the game. But we're not there yet. That's a long ways away. If we do get there, we'll be lucky. We'll have had a fantastic season if we are there and saying we get to play.
If we're talking about Vegas in February,
Okay, so this weekend, the Niners play the Browns, and the Browns defensively are a pretty darn good football team. I know, Deshaun Watson, his whole thing is when he plays well, I think that defense is able to hold court a little bit. And he was hurt last week. I haven't heard anything about him, so maybe he's going to be completely fine by the time the Niners play him, by the time that we play him. But what do you think about Cleveland? Because I think a lot of people think that before Chubb went down that they were a good opportunity to get one of those 4, 5, 6, 7 seeds. And with the way that that division is right now, Pittsburgh beat Baltimore today. Baltimore kind of gave that game away. We beat Pittsburgh. Like, Pittsburgh wasn't a problem for us. That division just may be up for grabs. So, this is a game where Cleveland is, they're going to have to play their A game here. They're at home. It is early in the morning. They are coming off of a bye. The Niners have the late game on Sunday. So this has kind of all the makings of what people would say, this is a game
It's a trap
to watch out for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
they can't, they're not scoring the football themselves, but they're not giving up a lot of points either. I think it's going to be another good test for the 49ers here. If this Dallas game was, your ultimate test for this early in the season, I don't think the Cleveland game is that far down from what this Dallas game was.
I mean, they are a talented football team. They've kind of been a joke, but you talk about in my mind, the 4 elite defensive players in the league are Bosa, Micah, TJ, and Miles Garrett. And we've got to deal with Miles Garrett, this week. And he's not the only talented player. That's why, like you said, they were kind of the darling, kind of like the Lions in the NFC, to be a team that could be on the rise. It hasn't come to fruition. The Chubb injury hurts, and then there Watson was inconsistent early, and then he started playing well. And then there's the whole scuttlebutt about he could have played last week, but he didn't. And so it just kind of is a saga going on with him. But I don't think that we can overlook this matchup. And I would imagine, since we've got the Vikings next week, this is going to be a 2-week road trip kind of situation. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up in Youngstown or something like that for in between. I doubt we're going to come home just to go back to Minnesota.
Vikings on Monday night too.
Yeah. So yeah, it's gonna be the little 2-game road trip. I know with Harbaugh, he used to talk about how he loved those because it was like a bonding situation for the team. Being together.
You just got each other. That's it.
Kind of galvanize the team in that win. Hopefully, we can get some of that action. And the thing that is impressive to me is the last several years we talked about this. I think in the before the season started that we've had several slow starts and have kind of, ramped up. And so now the challenge this season is we are red hot at this point. Is, the fact that you want to keep it going and keep us and keep ascending.
Yep.
And you don't want to descend or fall off.
Plateau. How can you not plateau though? Like, that's like
hard. At some point, from where we're at now, I just, it's impossible to keep ascending, from now to, where, we're at the top of Kilimanjaro by January, if, at this rate. So yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to be a trap game. All the build up, going into this week, and the Cowboys. I don't know, for players and what, I know it's a big deal for the fans and the media. I don't know. I've never been a player, obviously. But this is what the gamblers definitely call a trap game. On the road against a lesser opponent. Like you say, that early morning for bettors, that West Coast to the East Coast early morning game has always been a bet. You bet on that team coming from west to east on the road, that's just that's just a foreign bet. You just make that bet because it's just the traveling. It's just usually it's a hard spot for the team, but this is a good football team, and this was a challenge, and I mean they stepped up and performed exceedingly well. So we'll see. I look forward to breaking that one down, and we'll spend the next couple of days kind of looking at this one.
I know I got to start looking at Browns football articles on the Athletic.
Yeah.
So I wanted to quickly, before we get to our player of the game, Robert Ramos, he jumped into the chat. He sent us a photo in the Discord of the traffic line to get into the stadium, and he said it was 7:30 a.m.
Woo.
Do they even? I didn't even know that they opened the
Right.
ability to tailgate that early.
I thought it was like 3 hours or something like that. That's
maybe it was
crazy. Well, yeah, maybe it was a late game, and because it was a late game. But damn, but think about that though. If you're in line at 7:30 for a 5:30 tip, man, do you know how drunk you would be by the time you'd be drunk, and then you'd be sober again by the time by the time it was game time.
If you had like a truck, you could take a nap in the back.
That is a power tailgate. Kudos to those people.
Oh, Robert is saying that it was just the line before to get a spot because it wasn't open yet. So it was just people lined up
for the lineup.
when it was going to be open. So Shelby says that Deshaun Watson was cleared to play last week, but he chose to sit out.
Yeah, I heard that was the scuttlebutt.
So, all right, let's talk about our player of the game. You were kind of teasing it, who it was not. So give me your player of the game.
Brock Purdy. I went with Brock.
Mine too.
This week's statistically wasn't as impressive as last week, but somehow, like you said, I think I'm factoring in the stage and the situation. It was a masterful performance under the bright lights, and he was rock solid, and I was really impressed. Bosa and Warner are my honorable mentions. I want to give some love too to Kyle Shanahan, who always gets all kinds of shit. He really called a great game, and shout out to Coach Wilkes too.
Yeah,
he was really aggressive with his play calling, and he had those dudes, ready to play. I mean, they really stifled that Cowboys offense. So shout out to our coaches, shout out to Brock, shout out to Bosa and Warner.
Fred was tremendous. He had the fumble, the punch out. He had a sack as well. He had an interception. So talk about like a triple threat of a game for him, like just tremendous stuff. Of course, Purdy and Ayuk have some sort of chemistry. And we kind of talked about this last year. Jimmy and Ayuk were starting to get that chemistry where he was hitting Ayuk in stride, and Ayuk wasn't having to break stride, and he was able to take like a short post and, go 15 yards or go 20 yards. And he has the same chemistry with Brock. So at this point, it's got to be Ayuk. Like he's just at the level
he's that dude.
He's playing. He's sort of perfected what his game is, and which is great to see because we remember his rookie year. And, they were putting I don't know if it was an Apple Watch or what, but they were checking out how hard he was running on every practice play, and they were not happy with that. And so just to see him come full circle with this team is amazing. And he's going to get paid, hopefully by us, but he's going to get paid this offseason. And, CMC did, like I said, he did not have his best game, but they still got him that touchdown. So he got 14 in a row. And I guess that ties Emmitt Smith's record of all people. So in 2 consecutive weeks, You break Jerry's team record, and then you match Emmett's record for weeks with a touchdown. So that's talk about rarefied air, Jerry and Emmett. Even though if young people who may be listening to this are like, Jerry and Emmett, you mean those dudes in that Lay's commercial looking all old? Is that who you're talking about? But those are two of the baddest to ever do it. So that's a great place for CMC in the record books, is right next to those guys. So all right, we will be back next week, and Niners play at 10 Pacific, so we'll be back in the afternoon after that game is over. And then, like I said, the week after is the Monday Nighter. I kind of liked having the Sunday to where, I'll check in on some games. I'll check in on Red Zone, but I was doing other things. I got to watch some of the WNBA finals today. Warriors got their WNBA team, the Warriors management. Brian and I talked about that last week on the death lineup. And I'm Bay Area sports are kind of popping right now. If we could just figure out this A's situation, if Lakeup could figure out how, maybe he could, I don't know, can he do something? Can he trick Lou Wolf into selling the team to him so we keep him in Oakland? Just like so many great things happening, even though my Giants are the ultimate 500 team, win one, lose one. But things are going good, which means it's good for our podcast network here. So for the rest of this week, Brad and I will be back on Monday live streaming. Podcast will be in the feed on Tuesday, talking about Kapler and what the Giants are going to do, and also look at the beginning of the baseball playoffs. And then Thursday, Brian and I will be back with the death lineup. The Warriors open their preseason. The preseason game was super high quality basketball. No LeBron, no Draymond, but man, those guys were balling, both teams. It was really fun to watch. And then you and I will be back on Sunday. In the middle of that, I'll also have a 49ers preview. I'm trying to think of ways to do the little mini episodes for the other teams as well. And I know you're thinking about a segment that you could send me for these little mini-sodes. So we'll have like a little what Rod is watching here in those episodes once we can figure that out. So it won't only be me. There'll also be a Rod segment in those as we go on through this season. So I want to say thanks to Shelvin, of course, the third man in the booth here. Shelvin, my buddy Randy, who he and my best friend Ed were both at the game, but my best friend is a Cowboys fan, so he, the battles that he and I were having in the early 90s in high school, and Rick as well, Rick the OG, and Robert Ramos, of course. Thanks to all of you guys for checking in. So we will see you when we see you. For Rod, I'm Double G. Peace out.